USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veteran stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
My name is Chip Hanson. Originally I was from Joliet, Illinois. The population at high school was 12,000 students. I didn't go into the Marine Corps right out of high school because my father died. He died of leukemia.
So what year are we talking about now?
1966. And so I have two brothers. Both of them are Marines. One was a career Marine, and we decided, I says, okay, I'm not going to go into the Corps, or I'm not going to go into the military right now. I'll wait a year. And they said, yeah, stay there. And so when a year was up, I went to the recruiter, and I didn't sign anything, but I went over and got everything set up. And I called my brother Bill. He was a captain in the Marine Corps at that time. And I said, hey, I got everything set to go. I wanted to go over some things with you. And he says, well, what do you got? And I went over with a few things. He says, those things are offered in the Marine Corps. I says, no, I'm going in the Air Force. You would have thought I was going into the Communist Party at that time. So, he told me a few things. He says, you go back there. A friend of mine is a good friend of mine is the recruiter. I'm calling him right now. He'll have everything ready for you to sign. The guy did. The only thing was I told him I wanted the shortest term that they had, and they had a 2-year term at that time. But if you go 2 years, you're going to become a grunt, and you're going to go over to Vietnam, and it's flip a coin if you're coming back. I said, I'm coming back. That's not a problem, but if I got to go in the Marine Corps, I want to go in for as short a period as I can. The guy was right. I ended up in Vietnam as in the infantry. So now we had trained with M14s, the whole thing through 13 weeks of boot camp, 4 weeks of ITR, 4 weeks of BITS. We had to be able to tear it apart, put it back together blindfolded with the drill instructor smacking us in the head and everything else. When we went into staging, or Westpac staging, and they gave us these little black plastic rifles, and we thought, geez, this is from Meade Mattel. It was weapons. It was the first generation of M16s that we had never seen up to that point. And I'm looking at it, holy cow, I don't want this, but I got it. And then they flew us into Vietnam. We flew into Da Nang, and that's where we started out at. So we got off of the C-130 aircraft in Da Nang, and then there was 2 lines. We went in, and they lined us up. Okay, you're going to be in this line, you're going to be in this line, and I was in this line. The next morning we got up, we had little ditty bags. I don't know if you know what that was. And he flew us into Khe Sanh, and that was the first day of the siege of Khe Sanh. Nobody knew the siege was starting. The aircraft was a C-130. It came into the runway, and they were trying to frag it. It was hit explosions all over the thing. And I thought, okay, this guy's going to take off. We're not going to have to stay here. He dropped the rear of that aircraft down. And in the United States Marine Corps way, and then not the good voices and not the good language, get off this plane. We're all jumping off, and there's bam, bam, bam all over the place. And I don't know, I saw a couple of guys fall down, but they kind of got up and went back in. The guy who was right in front of me went down. I mean, he went down, and I knew he got hit. And so when I went back to grab him, some guy came running up, a Marine ran up out on the runway, and he grabbed me by the neck and threw me down, and he says, there's nothing we can do for that guy. I says, how do you know? He didn't check him. We saw his head get blown off. And so that was my introduction to combat. Well, when they got us in, they took us into a bunker. Everything, I don't know if you know about Khe Sanh. Khe Sanh was totally underground. It was trenched to bunker, bunker to trench. We got assigned a unit, and I got assigned to Lima Company. And so I went over, and Lima Company assigned me to the 1st platoon. And so I went in, and they stuck me in a bunker, and I says, okay, this is your temporary bunker. Here's an E-tool, start digging. So me and another guy, we dug out our own little place in the ground. And My squad leader, who still had an M14, and M14 with a starlight scope was pretty cool. He says, you know, I've never tried one of those. Let's trade off. And I said, okay, you got it, pal. The second week I was there, we were issued some plastic sleeping bags with zippers on them. This is great. It's raining. I'll be all right. And so the next day, the squad leader came around. He says, okay, don't let it bother you, but these are your own private, what do they call the body bags. Yeah. And he says, hang on to them. I said, okay, but I'm still going to use it to sleep in them.
I'm going to make some use out of it.
Every day we'd get hit with artillery or whatever they were shooting at us with up to 1,500 rounds. And we got so used to it, you know, hey, that was just the way it was. Now, then the B-52 started bombing. They would drop about 2,000-pound bombs. I don't know, have you ever heard a 2,000-pound bomb drop out of a B-52? You ever been to a drag strip where the dragsters, that's exactly what it sounds like. We were there for, I'm going to say 3 months. At the end of the third month, they came in and says, okay, we're going to move out. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to take Hill 881. And I says, I have no idea what that means. 881 is the number of meters above ground that hill is. And I still had the M14. The only way I could get ammunition was to go to the guy who had the M60 machine gun, and we'd pop a bunch out, and then I'd load up 4 or 5 magazines. And I figured, okay, we're going to go up this hill, and I want to make sure I don't get hit. And so I went and I set my M14 on fully automatic, and I'd spray. You know, you could only spray it. You couldn't spray the whole time. But I figured this is working. I'm not trying to hit anybody. I'm trying to deflect all the bullets coming at me. So you are to stay in your position until you can no longer move, and then when you no longer can move, you lay there and keep shooting. So basically, that was the order of the Marines, and we all decided, okay, that's what's going to happen. If I'm going to die here, then I'm going to die here. And you know, that's when I thought my brother says, I'm going to go back and haunt his rear end. But we had accepted that, and we had accepted the fact that we were to stay there and hold our position until it was no longer possible. But we lost probably 15 people per battalion, let alone how many got wounded in that one. And then when we got up there, of course, we basically took out I think a full company of NVA and Red Chinese. They took and they carved 326 in the chest of a whole bunch of those guys. And I'm thinking, man, oh man, I didn't even want to do that. But that came back to bite us later. We came down, and we got picked up by some helicopters, and they took us, I forget the name of the base, I'm going to say Phu Bai, one of those places. We all went in, and I thought, this is great. Here I am, we're going in, we're going to have a real rack or something to get us off the ground and sleep. We've got showers, they're going to give us clean clothes, I get to shave, I get to do the 3 S's, and they're going to give us beer and steaks. And I thought, these guys are wonderful human beings, you know. And so that night I had first watch, and I don't know why they had us watching, but I guess they want to make sure that somebody didn't take our gear. So, you know, I'd walking around and looking, and all of a sudden I heard boom, 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 and rockets. We got hit. We lost 30 Marines that night. And it was much later I found out it was I think it was the 24th of the NVA came down to get us back. And they did. When we came into our final drill, our final operation, it was called Operation Meade River. And there was a group of us that were tight. I mean, very, very tight. We were in the same squad. And they had a new company commander, and he came up and he knew that I knew my way around the radio, PRC, or if they were, excuse me folks, called a Prick 25. And that was what they were called. And he says, I want you to be my radio man. I thought, hey, this is great. I'm going to be in the company. I'm going to be I'm going to skate. I'm going to sit up there and be with the CO and get all the good stuff and not have to do a lot. And I said, okay. So we went in, and they set up. And to see that many helicopters coming in and dropping off people, it was just awesome. And so we started it in about 4 or 5 days into the operation, boom, boom, boom. We were losing people. And so whoever was in charge of that operation, in the infinite wisdom of whoever that was, decided, okay, let's get some squads out there and take a look and see what's going on in the daytime. And so they went around, and each company had to send a squad out. And the squad that went out was my old squad from about a week and a half, 2 weeks before then. And so the guy I was with, and I says, okay, listen, I'm going to be talking to all of them, but I'm going to specifically be your go for it. He says, okay, the squad leader. I said, all right. So we went out there, and this guy called back, and you're supposed to go out 10-4, how you're not 10-4. He said, Chip, this is what the name guy was. I'm outgunned. I don't know what to do. I said, first of all, you settle down. We got people going out to help you. And I mean, you could hear the fires and the shots going, and then all of a sudden they stopped. And I heard 4 or 5 shots, and they were execution shots. And my company commander looked at me, and he could tell that I was really ticked. And he says, why don't you go find somewhere and sit out there and see if you can help. But there was a gunnery sergeant. He was on a hill that was, I don't know if you want to call it a hill or a bump, but it was about 2.5, 3 feet up off the ground. So I went over there, and I says, Gunny, I'm here to help you out. And so we started laying down a base of fire while they brought people in. And when I got there, there was like 15, 20 rifles already there. And he says, listen, just lay your rifle down and let's shoot until they get empty, and we'll just keep going. And okay. And then they started bringing my people in. Every one of them were dead. And they brought in my friend, and he was still somewhat alive. He had no idea where he was. I mean, he was mumbling on about this and that. And they laid him down, and by the time all this was over, he was dead. So I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to him. I don't think he would have known. But that, I've seen a lot of people get killed. I saw a lot, but that was my toughest time, was right there, because I should have been out there with him. Would I have gotten killed? Probably. When we got done, though, because we had lost so many people during that operation, the 26th, or I think it was the whole 26th, was they need to regroup. This is great. I'm going to spend the rest of my tour over in the Philippines, and then it came back. If you have less than 6 months left in service, you're staying here. And I says, okay, I'll re-up. No, no. So I had to stay there, and they assigned me to 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, which was a Da Nang security, which was beautiful. I mean, this is wonderful. And my CO says, okay, we're going to give you 1 week to get there. And I says, I know, I'm going to take a freaking week to get there, And I did. On my way there, we jumped in a Jeep, and there was 4 other people in there. And we headed into Da Nang proper. And I got to see a Bob Hope Christmas show. There was probably 1,000 other people there, so I'm sure, I wasn't the only one that he was talking to. He was waving at us. Ann Margaret was there.
They came to see me. I'm the star. They didn't come to see you. Isn't that right, fellas?
Any other questions?
Yeah, where can I find the chaplain?
Well, I went over and I joined 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines Kilo Company. I wanted a squad, but all the squads were pretty well filled up, so they gave me what they call a team. I had a fire team of 5 people. And I figured, okay, I'll just take these guys. And we'd go out every night, and we'd go into whatever parts of Da Nang, and they got to know these people. And they were nice to us, but I still didn't trust anybody. And so we would lay up, and we'd sit there all night. And then we'd come back in during the day and do things like you're supposed to do, like drill. And I said, geez, I haven't done that for a long time, but that was all right. That was okay. And then they switched me, and we were over in a cemetery, so we started going in a cemetery. And on Christmas Eve, 1968, I spent Christmas Eve on the gravesite. It was a mound in Da Nang, and that was my Christmas Eve. That was my Christmas tree. That was our Christmas tree, all 4 of us. And I knew Christmas Day come because they started shooting up all these red and green flares into the air, and I thought, oh wow, this is great. And the same thing happened on New Year's Day. They set us up in the same position. And then the first week of January, I got an opportunity to take an R&R. I hadn't taken an R&R. I only had about a month left. I says, I'll take it. Give it to me. And so I went to Sydney, Australia. And I chose that because of the length of time that you have off. It takes normally it's a week. This is 10 days because of the travel time. I didn't care where I was going, but it was going to take a while. And this is great. I got it on, the jet ride was forever, but that was fine. It was quiet,
Safe.
and nobody was shooting at me. I didn't have to worry about a thing. And got back, and when I came in, they had sent our platoon out into the field, which was really, well, I can't say stupid. They didn't have any combat experience at all. And my squad had to go out one night, and we went over and we went through a little village and all this kind of stuff. And I had a boot. I mean, the guy was just brand new there. And you could tell he was scared to death. And we're walking, and he tripped, and he had his rifle off of safety on fully automatic. And when he went down and went up like that, fortunately it didn't hit anybody. I totally lost it. I'm lucky I didn't beat the crap out of the kid, but I didn't, because I didn't want to. And when I went back in, the first place I went was to the CO, and I said, look, get this kid out of my unit right now. And they did. They got him out. And that's how I spent the last month in Vietnam. We didn't know that all this crap was going on. And when we got out, all of a sudden, I'm in the San Francisco airport with my Marine Corps uniform on. I said, this is great. People are going to come up and shake my hand and say, how are you? I had my salad, my fruit salad over there. And there was a group of kids. I mean, they were kids. And all of a sudden, I hear them yelling, baby killer. And I'm thinking, okay, let me find this guy. I'm going to kick his, And I realized they were looking at me. And this little girl, she was not probably more than 15, and came up and spit on me. And I thought, holy cow, what am I into here? Get me, And that was my greeting back here. Didn't get any better after that. Well, I understand if you're a combat veteran, you have seen and done things that most people don't do in an entire lifetime. And it's hard to open up, so I understand that. But it took me 40 years to even accept the fact that I was a Vietnam veteran. And finally, the way it happened was, and I'll say this guy's name because in my heart, he was my second father. His name was John Haynes. He was filing claims. He knew everything there was to know about filing a claim for somebody, and he kept up to me. He says, hey, you need to file a claim. I said, I don't need to file no claim. I came in one day, true story, his ghost will come back and tell you this is the truth. And we're sitting down, we're getting ready to go to a meeting, and he slapped this down on the bar and he says, sign here, Marine. I says, what am I signing? Never mind, sign here. And he says, okay, if you don't hear anything from the VA within 2 months, let me know. Within 6 weeks, I was 70% on PTSD, and I was receiving funds for that. 2 years later, they gave me 100%. Of course, by that, and within that period of time, I'd already developed leukemia, and I had lost one kidney. The other's not functioning. I got more things wrong with me. I should be in a medical school, but it was all from Agent Orange. But that man was tremendous. Well, anyway, since about 2009 to present, I've been a service officer chaplain. I think most everybody's entitled to something. When somebody comes in and they're talking, well, I wasn't in combat. I didn't do this. So I find out, that they were in the 60s and 70s. And I said, well, do you have tinnitus? Well, yes, I do. Okay, let's put you in for that. That's 10%. And they're hearing. And then they go in and they find out that they were in the Navy. They were exposed to asbestos. There was so many things. Those that were Marines that were in Camp Lejeune. The water there that was in Camp Lejeune, I don't know if you ever heard that, but it's causing a lot of problems. In the last 2 years, the PACT Act has gone through Congress, and it has basically opened up the door. I mean, it was a big door for everybody to come in and file, and it's helped us to get things through. There's just so many things. We're all volunteers. We don't get one thin dime. When I do a burial or when I go up and do an end of life, and I get that through a lot every once in a while. I'm like I say, I'm working with right now pretty much with St. Francis Hospice. They are an outstanding hospice organization. I've gone and you know you're doing an end of life. The guy may be there, but they don't understand what you're saying. You know that, and I'll always try to do a prayer or something. The idea is to go and comfort the people. That's what you want to do. If a veteran dies, there's not a lot you can do for that individual. There's a lot you can do to comfort those people.